your AI is only as good as the data that you feed it, right? So I think the agents themselves aren't necessarily the things that are having to change, right? The kind of the prompts and the instructions and the things that the agent does usually is the same because it's support function, right?
Hey, greetings everybody. This is the Hyperengage Podcast, and we are so glad to explore another avenue into like a spectrum of customer support. I know we've had like so much of GTM operations of GTM tooling in the past, in the recent past, and a lot of these call themselves AI native or AI first or AI powered. I know that it is definitely a buzzword, but a lot of these platforms they are actually doing and delivering. Uh, and making using AI to create a difference and make an impact. We are going to talk about how customer support has changed and transformed over the recent, I would say, 3 to 4 years with the impact of AI. And a lot of that has been replaced and or automated by AI. Actually, it was first to be replaced when GPT-3 came up, GPT 3.5 came up, and all this generative AI, conversational AI, and a lot of these text platforms that turned into marketing tooling and all of these. So a lot of these industry shift that has happened in the past 3 years, and I'm so glad to have the founder of Foqal.io. It's a Slack plus Microsoft team first platform enabling customer support teams to manage support inside these environments and make sure that they do it right and at scale. So thank you very much, Vlad, for taking the time.
Anytime, always happy to be here and like, glad to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So I know that since we last spoke, a lot of things are different. A lot of that you may or may not have anticipated in terms of how fast things moved. So what's your take on the current situation in the support? Every startup, even bigger companies, are trying to treat their customer support as something that they're not. It's something that they don't use, and they have AI or agents or all of this to replace them. And how do you see this customer support as a category?
Oh, I mean, yeah, there's definitely been a lot of change, and it's kind of like it's funny you can't talk about customer support without AI nowadays. So it's interesting that about a year ago we went to all of our customers and we were like thinking about different AI features, and at the time we were really just focusing on Slack as a support function and or Slack and Teams of support. We were really just focusing on that, and we tried to propose AI features to our customers. And at that time, nobody was really ready for it. Everyone did, their legal departments weren't ready for it. Their security departments weren't ready for it. Nobody was kind of excited about it yet. Um, and over the course of about a year, at this point now, every single one of our customers is coming to us and saying we need some AI features. And what we've seen is a lot of it sounds like it's coming from the top down. So a lot of it, it's a lot of like CEOs and founders and the heads of the companies are pushing and requiring AI features from their employees to the point where I don't know if you saw the article the other day that Microsoft is requiring all their employees to start using AI features. So I mean, I think that's definitely the biggest shift, which is not something that necessarily we. I mean, I guess we saw it coming, but we didn't necessarily foresee it to this degree. Um, it was interesting. Like so with Focal, we always had AI features. We actually started using ChatGPT with version two, or we used OpenAI with version two. So before it was even ChatGPT, we were using AI to try to answer questions. And at that time, it wasn't as good as it is today, but it was actually pretty good. Um, and just that, and we've always had that functionality, but in the last year, the adoption of all that functionality has been so strong that we had to expand it and build in a lot of features and build in a lot of reporting and everything else. So it's amazing how much that's actually taken off. I think that's definitely the biggest category.
Amazing, and it has gained such huge volume because support is the core of your success, and it is so critical to any customer success function. Even the core of post sales and all. And we see a lot of these implementation teams. They are using tooling and products, and they're also living mostly inside the workflows like Slack and Microsoft Teams. What kind of customer segment are you guys targeting? I know that you've gone up market recently as well. So could you give us tell us more about your customer segments and how you guys have expanded in the past 4 years, 4 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, we've always had, I guess our segment hasn't changed too much in the last year. We've kind of been all over the place. I mean, we have a pretty wide range of customers, starting with, somewhere where it's like one or two people for on the support team to, hundreds. Um, and we've seen that kind of, one way we measure it is based on number of agents. One way we measure it is based on number of channels. Usually we see it from about the 10 to 20 customers, probably more in the 20 customer range, to hundreds of channels. And some of our customers have, hundreds and thousands of customers in Slack and Teams. Um, so I think that segment has probably been about the same in terms of where we are. Sorry, what was the second part of the question again?
Like how it's like how it's expanding. Like I know that more and more enterprise teams are using like multiple tooling for chat support, all of this. Like how it encompasses on a larger perspective, like at scale for enterprises. I know that it's more like you think of support and using automated tools and AI powered tools to for live chat and email support. You think of like SMBs or max mid-market companies. So how do you see this has changed or has not changed in enterprise?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think this on the enterprise side, first of all, we don't see as many enterprise customers. I think enterprise customers still typically are not yet doing Slack support or team support. On the Slack on the enterprise side, we do see more teams. However, in general, I think we're still seeing that it's probably like 80/20, 80% Slack support, 20% teams. And the kind of that separation that we see is also a lot of companies that maybe are using Slack internally. They don't necessarily want to be using Teams, or maybe they're using Teams internally. They don't want to be using Slack. So one of the things that we've seen is a lot of kind of more of this like mix and match, where in the past companies would say, hey, we're using Slack, we can offer you Slack support, we're not going to offer you team support. Now I think people have realized that you have to kind of do both. And I know some companies are even looking at like some of the other platforms. um, I think it depends on kind of what segment you're in. I think the other big change is that you kind of mentioned 4 years. I mean, in the last, few years, I'm not exactly sure on the timing, but when we started doing this, it was not as common of a thing. Now it's, if you're a B2B company, um, especially startups, especially, mid, like a few hundred to a few thousand employees, you are probably offering customer support in Slack and Teams. Um, I think that's been probably one of the biggest changes. That it's not necessarily the biggest adoption in the enterprise space, but it's definitely a lot of adoption in that like small to mid market range.
Interesting. And also, I wanted to explore this adoption part as we spoke backstage as well. Like thinking of all of these, B2B core, like B2B SaaS startups in the early days to mid-size, like up to 200, 300 people with 20, 30 plus support reps. Do you think that it's easier for them to them to do the enablement around Slack support to their customers more often than regular, like there is a big category like email, like chat support and all of those. I know that you guys can integrate with it, but how well in terms of operational excellence, how do you manage to enable your customers with that operational excellence? So you resolving the tickets really, really fast, which is like top KPIs of customer support.
That's actually interesting that like a lot of people going into Slack support or going to like I guess messaging support are expecting that the KPIs that are going to matter most are just are resolution rates. When in reality, it's actually not resolution; it's more first response rates. So I think what we've seen is that our customers are mostly looking at that. Like our customers want their customers to get a fast first response and know that somebody's on top of it, but they don't necessarily need a full resolution right away. They just might need hey, we're looking into it. And then kind of nice thing about that is, a lot of people compare, messaging support to chat support. With chat support, you kind of have to have it, your resolution has to be within a few minutes. And the reason for that is, somebody's waiting on your page. Sometimes they're in the product, they're using it, and it's probably a little bit okay. But, a lot of times somebody's just waiting on your page and they're waiting for you to respond. So they're just kind of staring, and often they'll just, go away. With the Slack and Teams, it's not really an issue, right? You respond with an initial, when a customer is asking you something, you can respond with something initial, but if you come and answer the actual question a couple hours later, they're still going to get notified. It doesn't matter. They're not waiting on your website. So it's actually the metrics that matter aren't necessarily the resolution time. I mean, obviously, a better resolution time will still make customers happy, but I think the first response time is probably a more important metric for that kind of stuff. And then I think a lot of companies are just looking at like, the standard other metrics are, how many tickets are created and that kind of stuff. And people built a lot of SLAs around making sure that, if a customer writes something, then you automatically respond, or you respond within a certain amount of, and then when a customer says something, we respond within a certain amount of time. But it's not necessarily around speed. And I think I went off on a completely different tangent. That wasn't what you were asking, was it?
Yeah, I mean, because my first job in the software industry when I was pretty young was customer support rep. So I 100% agree that. I mean, I feel it because getting the first response was back then it was so hard. To do it for like hundreds of customers every single day, like as small as three people, and there was not so much technology. I remember there was a platform back in the day. It was like I think it was Crisp. CRISP, a support platform. We were using email support with Help Scout and all of these platform, and live chat becomes critical, especially you have some sort of product-led growth model, and you have some sort of freemium trial, or you're not capturing credit card, a lot of information, and you're tracking the usage and all, and people are having some issues or trouble with anything. And I mean, you do have documentation on the knowledge base and all, but they don't have time to go look at it. So there has to be someone or some automated responses or AI to cater those kind of live chat responses in the real time. So now thinking about this whole category, I know that when Slack came up for like these SaaS subscription based economy, and it was a big boom, and a lot of these companies, even from the Valley. Actually, it started from the Valley. They started building communities. Like I'm a part of 30 of them. To be very honest, it's such a pain in the ass. Somebody tags you in there and you have to go look. And just yesterday, I was looking at, and we are doing an event in Financial District SF on October 28th. So I was just looking for some communities that I was part of back in the years. And I thought like, hey, these folks I know, let me find those spaces. So of course, I actually got out of those spaces recently, and then I tried to find those workspaces, and there are like loads of them. But you get my point. Like it has become such a pain for people to stay in Slack for with these communities and engage. You get like all of this. I know that a lot of these marketing teams are sitting on Slack communities. So to be pretty much candid, what do you think? Like, how do you think like support and all of this unfolding in the coming years? I know that it was such excitement. Like, we are going to be like, there was a platform that came onto our podcast that are helping, companies, SaaS companies build communities on Slack and all. Still, it works, but I think how do you see it like for unfolding for support, doing
Yeah.
support, having the customers on.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One is most of the customers that we're seeing, they're not building. A lot of our customers aren't necessarily building communities. They were just using Slack's kind of direct message feature, or not direct message, but like the kind of the what's it called, shared channels, or that kind of thing, where it's like a direct communication between two companies. So it's not visible to everybody else. It's not something that's available to everybody. So they're not necessarily using communities. They're not using, and a lot of times these channels would get would get set up, and then it doesn't necessarily mean that people will always use them. It's like sometimes a channel gets set up, somebody will use it for a certain amount of time, and then kind of not need support for a while, forget about it, and then come back and maybe even create a new channel. So with some of our customers, I mean, obviously we offer our customers support over Slack and Teams. Um, some of our customers will come in and create a channel, and then a few months later they remember that they need another question, and then instead of finding that existing channel, they'll create a new one. So we've seen that kind of stuff. But to address your kind of your initial thought of like there's this sprawl of community, yeah, I agree. And then I'm assuming the product you were talking with is Tight Knit. They're kind of a cool company.
Yeah.
We talk a lot with them and work a
Amazing.
lot with them.
Zach is a great guy. Yeah, great guy. Yes. Yeah, I'm meeting him next week in New York City.
Very cool.
Great guy, but I need to check on him. Like, how is it that going like in terms of adoption and how is tracking value and success for his customers because these are like some really really tough metrics that he's after.
Yeah, and I'll sing Zach's praise. I think we can both sing Zach's praises. I mean, they're building a great product, him and Steven, but I think it's definitely a necessary thing. And I think it's not just like the community and like community management. It's kind of like making it into something that's not just a community. It's also making it into something that's kind of a program, right? So that you can manage not just the members, but you can have use it for marketing and use it to generate knowledge and that kind of stuff. Um, but I think in general, we're seeing is, especially compared to, when Slack communities started being a bigger thing, probably 10 years ago at this point, or 8 years ago or something at this point. I think there's a lot less communities nowadays. I think less people are trying to build them. It's definitely harder because I think people are realizing that, it's not just you build a community, you invite your members and then everybody is there. It's you build a community, you invite all your customers. Nobody really talks for a while. You need to engage all the community. You basically need somebody there full time. And unless your community is by default gigantic, you're going to have a hard time trying to do that. And it's just going to be a lot of resources and time and money to do that. So actually, one of the things that we've always recommended, and as I think has worked well for us, is just piggybacking on existing communities. So, early on, we were part of a support driven, for example. One of the things that we did was we just worked with them and said, hey, instead of building our own community, why don't we just add a channel here about Slack, right? And that became one of the channels that we just talk about Slack. And the same thing with other communities. And so one of the things we kind of advocate is, realize that a community is going to take a lot of your time and resources. You probably need somebody full time to do it. So is there an existing community you can work with and kind of adopt, right? Instead of having to build your own. And then there's a lot of benefits, right? Because that community has a lot of people. So you just have to kind of lure them in. You can invite your customers to it. So the community is growing and they're happy about that. And at the same time, there's a lot more potential in getting new customers because of conversations happening in the community because all these people that are already in the community, hopefully you're picking a good community because they're going to be good potential customers. Um, so yeah, and I think the other thing you were kind of talking about was there's a lot of like GDM strategy and like go to market around community. I think there is. It's really that also kind of depends on the community. I mean, some communities are very like pro kind of marketing, pro talking about products and trying to help evangelize, and some communities are very against it. And it's also not even like the people that organize the community. A lot of times it ends up being just the members. So I'll give you two examples. One community we're part of, where there's like strict guidelines around you have to explicitly say that, hey, I'm using this, I'm representing this product when you're saying an opinion, or if you're talking about your product in any way that's kind of promotional, you have to like explicitly say that. And even with that, some people will kind of go, yeah, yeah, okay, whatever. Versus we have another community where we're part of a different community where we don't have to say anything explicit. It's kind of implied that like, hey, we're representing this product, and people were like, oh, great, I want to talk to you, and they'll DM you. So it's not even the organizers of the community that kind of set the rules there. It's
I
really
mean,
more about the community itself.
yeah, and that's where like products like Titan come into play. Like you don't need community managers to manage because it's a lot of work, as you mentioned. Manage and keeping the community engaged and consistently deliver value, education, for people that signed up for you. And yeah, I mean, so now how do you see a lot of these developer tools that came onto our podcast, a lot of these platforms are more mostly like open source platforms. They are more like community-led support and all of that. And on Slack, I know that you also have like some of your customer segments in their open source platforms. There are loads that came onto our podcast. So like, how is it how that support is different compared to like a regular SaaS platform for like other tech companies, like yourself. So how do you see the difference? Like, how is that panning out? Because that support has been there for a long time, very long time. Like these developer tools, they always had like, support inside their own systems, the platforms. Sometimes it's Slack. So, uh, you know, what's the difference that you see, in adoption, developer
Right.
tools compared to, regular B2B SaaS?
Well, I think in general, like very, developer tools, and I'll probably put like, open source tools in general, right? Um, I think for those, there's usually already a large community that's already started on something like GitHub. And when Slack is brought in, it's usually there's already some kind of conversation, or there's already some community in Slack, or there's some community already in GitHub. So with that, it's like you're not really building necessarily a new community. You're just kind of finding a new home where it's a little bit more conversational from GitHub into Slack or Teams. Um, with B2B SaaS products, um, it's not exactly the same thing where the the type of, first of all, the audience is going to be a little bit different, right? It's going to be whoever your ICP is. It's not necessarily going to be developers. Developers are probably a little bit more, are definitely heavier users of Slack and stuff, so they're more heavy into it. Um, but I think yeah, that's the kind of the bigger differentiator there is like you're probably bringing a community into Slack when you're coming from with like open source. But then also I guess the model is going to be a lot different, right? With B2B SaaS, you're really worried about every single customer. You might not have as many of them, or you probably don't have as many customers as you have in open source tools. Where in open source tools, you might have a project that has 10,000 likes or something. You have to support all those people, and you can't really support them answering every single question. You have to do it at scale. So there's a lot of things like AI that needs to be powered on. With B2B SaaS, there's typically a little bit less customers. There's usually good mapping between, it's not individual people, it's usually like companies that are asking you questions, or a handful of people at a company that are asking you questions, and they're usually kind of working together. So I think that model is a little different. But so yeah, I think the short answer is if you have an open source community, if you're doing something, if you're building something open source, if you're using a Slack product or something, you need to just incorporate a lot of AI. And I think a lot of it is, pretty good in terms of like, hey, can you go get all those docs that you're probably already have for your open source product? If you don't have a lot of docs, then you probably need to do that anyway, because if you want people to be able to adopt you and be able to, use your product, then they probably need some documentation. Can you get all those documentation into something that the AI can read, so that when you do power that community, it can read it and it can answer the questions, and it can actually be iterative. It's not just answering one question at a time. And I think the more kind of examples you give it, the more data you give it, the better the content, the better that these AI products can answer these questions. And at the end of the day, yeah, you're still going to have to, even with as much AI as you can use, there's probably going to be some tickets that are still going to be routed to a person. So that's why a lot of these communities still have a support function. That's why a lot of it is still, not only are you managing, not only do you have to like engage people, but you also have to have support people in there that are kind of answering the customer questions that can't be answered by AI. Um, and the
Mhm.
more, and that's probably more typical of, open source products, because a lot of those are, engineering products, and engineering products usually typically have more
Mhm.
complicated types of, types of questions. And that's the other kind of
Yes.
thing we see, right, is that like the more, AI support is great for on the B2C side, AI is great, right? And that's why we're seeing intercom, and that's taking off very well. On the B2B side, it depends on the product. Sometimes if your product is very kind of simple, if you're using, let's say you're building a marketing tool, um, that's going to be probably, there's not going to be that much complexity in the product, and the users in the product are going to be not trying to do as much complex stuff. So AI is going to be great. if you're building a heavily, technical product that engineers are building and writing code, AI.
Implementation managers, yeah, solution architects are come into play working with support and all. Perfect. I know that it's the next big game, even in support, and I mean it started with support, by the way, to building specialized agentic workflows. You mentioned about different products, different segments. Just imagine like product doing support for three or four different industries for different all different products. There has to be some sort of standardized kind of a playbook, like at least 60 to 70% that they can build some agentic workflows around, like giving them specialized context to it and helping support be more personalized. Maybe gathering some information from the knowledge base. I know a lot of these tools are doing that. How do you s- how do you see it applying it at Focal? I know that you have a very smart AI assistant. I know that your enterprise plan has some of the capabilities that are more specialized to different use cases and more tailored for specific segments. So how do you see this agentic frameworks panning out for you in a longer run for especially where you have the most chunk of your customers like small to mid market?
I think what's interesting is that the actual agents don't have to change too much. It's more of the data sources that change, right? I think I like to say that, like, and I don't think I created this phrase, but it's like your AI is only as good as the data that you feed it, right? Um, so I think the agents themselves aren't necessarily the things that are having to change, right? The kind of the prompts and the instructions and the things that the agent does usually is the same because it's support function, right? When somebody's asking a question, you want to, maybe change the tone slightly. You want to, some of the things are going to be a little bit different, but ultimately you're either trying to answer the question, run some kind of automation, or answer the question if you can. So I don't think it's necessarily that the agent themselves are very different regardless of industry. I think it's really the data that you're connecting it to. And this is where, things like MCP are going to be are really interesting. And this is one of the things that I'm most
Sources, yeah.
excited for is just more and more MCP. Everything's more is building an MCP server, which is actually really cool. Um,
Yes,
but I think just the data, it just is the
absolutely.
difference in industries is going to be what MCP servers you connect it to, and not only are those
Yes,
MCP servers getting you, better data, it's what actions are they taking, right? So it's like if your product
yes.
has MCP built in, it's like, can you get your AI agent to go and change someone's password? Can you get it to enable some
Having the
permissions to
right
them?
prompts, having the right context to the prompt to get the best outcome. We were building we started building co-pilots some quarters ago, a couple of quarters ago, and we started with CRM, like all these basic data sources like product analytics and all of that. And then we thought, hey, then we actually at the same time we tried to validate it with some initial pilot customers, and we then realized, hey, we need qualitative data sources as well. Like why not getting data from meeting notes, getting data from external LinkedIn, Crunchbase, Trustpilot, like all these platform. Then hey, why not we just get data from Slack to put more context into, if that is for post sales or GTM tool, it needs context across all like 360 view of customer journeys and all of those. So yeah, again, 100%. Like it's about the data sources as well as how smartly you engineer it. Like you tell the agent, hey, this is the outcome. This is what it's needed for you to go and check and validate and you know so all of that and support it. It's also a big use case. Like every product has a knowledge base. They have help docs. They have pricing and packaging pages. You can identify their customer segments by looking at their pricing a little bit. A lot of them have their listed segments and industries as well. If not, looking at their knowledge base, you can see like, is that going to be more product led sales, these kind of things. This is how we are actually envisioning for like, doing the engineering, right? Engineering to build the agentic workflows for a GTM tool, and it is highly dependent on the data sources, as you mentioned. Perfect. So now talking about Vlad, I know that go-to-market has been becoming hardest and hardest, and raising funds has been the toughest. And I would say in the beginning of this year, it has started a lot of these investors, VCs, even angels that I know, they're banging their head investing into these AI tools that look so flashy, and then there's so many category leaders, and they actually replace them or acquire them. And this has happened with a lot of technologies. We've seen Focus, yeah, correlated shutting down. We've seen June shutting down. We've seen a lot of these platforms that got shut down just because that they thought they will build, and they promised into their messaging and into the investors that they are building something AI native and out of this world. Not to name all of these, but again, what is your situation in terms of competing in the market? I know that standing out makes you spill some money out of your back pocket into customer acquisition and marketing. I was looking at some stats coming this year's 90% of these GTM tooling spending more than 60% of their yearly budget on marketing and customer acquisition and sales, all of that. So with not having a lot of funds or founder going lean, profitable, which is good. But again, seeing competitors having spending a lot of money on internet, digital marketing, all that. How do you feel as a founder from a business standpoint, commercial standpoint?
Well, I mean, I think one is we're kind of lucky in that we've always bootstrapped ourselves to growth, so we're profitable. We've had we've never had to rely on outside money. So yes, I mean we were definitely affected by the tides when people are buying more, than we have more revenue. When people are buying less, we have less revenue. Um, but we're not as affected by by the funding market. Um, but yeah, I mean, but that also means that some of these competitors are better funded, and you have the kind of, at this point where we're also seeing more more competition from like the legacy or maybe the bigger companies, right? So companies like Zendesk and Jira and ServiceNow and all of those companies are building their own AI agents. They're building their own AI functionality. So it's definitely there's more competition from more places. It's funny that it's like I used to have a spreadsheet of just all of our competitors, and it started being crazy long, and then it started and then it was kind of hard to track, because like we would see a startup that just started, and then they start doing something, and then they shut down, or they don't exist anymore, or they just pivot to something else. So that's definitely been interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of competitors spending a lot. And the interesting thing is, I think it depends on who they are and what they're spending on. Without naming any competitor names, I remember a couple of years ago there was a company that was spending a lot of money on marketing and really talking about Slack as a support space. And we haven't seen much of them, I think, in the last year, and no idea what happened to them. And at this point, some of their customers were leeching and stuff. So that's an interesting space. And then there's other ones that we haven't heard about last year, a couple years ago, and now they're a lot bigger. So I think that segment is playing itself out. I mean, in general, I think support segment is playing itself out, because AI, because Slack are kind of like newer, or like Slack support are kind of a newer thing. There's a lot of stuff up in the air. So, in the past we used to think, oh, like what happens if like this company comes in and starts out marketing and out spending? It's like we've seen that, and then those companies sometimes do well and sometimes disappear. So it's not necessarily that we have to focus on competitive. So I think the way that we try to look at it is, instead of trying to focus on what our competitors are doing, it's, I think the standard notion, right, is let's look at what we're doing. Let's build the best product for our customers, and let's make our customers happy. Because one of our biggest kind of marketing efforts is word of mouth, right? Is that our customers talking to each other, our customers finding out about each other. And one of my favorite things is that we have certain customers that will, like, they'll work somewhere, and then, due to layoffs, they might have to leave, and then they'll contact us. And my favorite thing is, this happened actually, I think last week. We have a call soon with a person that was our customer. They got laid off, or I think they actually found a new job or something. And then after 4 days of being on that job, they're reaching out to us to get Foqal back in. So so I think that's been a good kind of marketing
Mm,
strategy for us. It's not necessarily let's go spend lots and lots of money and try to do that. But we have been doing, but at the same time, we are doing a lot of like targeted things, like, right, we're trying to, as we kind of talked about communities, we talked about, we're trying to do a little bit of conferences and figuring out which conferences really is best for our ICP. We're trying to do different like smaller events. We're trying to do so. There's a bunch of different things that we're trying to
Hmm.
do, and really figure out. And yeah, it's like things like email are kind of dead, and things like LinkedIn
Hmm.
are kind of dead. Um, I was at at SaaStr a few months ago, and I kind of there was a one of those AI BDR agents that go out and like do all this cold outreach. And I asked them like, okay, so you're saying email is dead. What do you recommend? And somebody was like, oh yeah, one thing that's worked is getting voice notes on LinkedIn. Apparently that's a thing.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
so I think that there's the typical. So at the end of the day, there's all these tools. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, they're really feeding into the same channels. Um, so really, it's just what channels still work.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. I mean,
email is definitely.
also the SEO part and all of these ranking and the recommendation on these LLMs. This is going big too. I was just talking to my team last week for having a meeting around this, and they said like a lot of our articles on these episodes are coming on the recommendation for some of the keywords because maybe we haven't done anything. Like it's just that like we had this conversation, we put it out, and that has been same for all this time. And it's always good to put out content as well, so to rank and recommendation. We have on average 3 to 5 signups on one of our products every single month from ChatGPT, like on average. So that is also one thing. Love it. So Foco is I know that we've seen it long enough, and you guys are doing a great job at retaining and having the right customer advocacy. I know that a lot of companies they already know you. A lot of these customer support reps when they go into different companies or senior roles or they switch roles, they always advocate about Foco, and that's why we have you again. Really appreciate your time. Think about just one little thing on the go-to-market side, like how you guys are trying to go multi-product or serving adjacent because it has been hardest for the support tool. Either you go big like Zendesk or Intercom, or you do the product right and you survive and you have like bottom line funnel, or maybe it's hard to beat these giants for several different reasons, not just the product. How do you see it for the go-to-market strategy to go multi-product in some way? Because I think of it as let's say a GTM tool can, let's say customer success tool can go about having a health scoring. That's an entire different product, a whole product. Journey mapping, success tracking, NPS tracking. You can have like 5, 6, or 7 different overlapping, I would say, JSON use cases for customer success or post sales. In support, how do you see it panning out, the JSON use cases? Because the category has never expanded as big as like other GTM tooling for sales, marketing, attribution, advertising, product analytics, all of this. So as a founder, what's your viewpoint on expanding in a longer term view to go about multi-product or serving that JSON use cases of, let's say, your JSON might be technical support, might be strategic customer support, like these enterprise companies, they have separate like division on that. So I was just thinking around while sitting on doing some research on Focal and your industry. So do you think it's hard? Is it good? Is it bad? In a longer term view, because everybody's going multi-product, everybody is building agents and all of that. You name it, like from Salesforce to Sales Intelligence, Gone to all of these platforms.
I think so. Your question is how. So how are we looking at multi-product, or
Yeah,
how are we
how do you see from a product perspective to serve adjacent use cases? Because there are not many that we see in support compared to like sales, marketing, integration. And what's your next go-to strategy in terms of like expansion and all of that from a go-to-market standpoint?
Got it, got it. Yeah, I mean, what we see a lot is there's instead of necessarily building additional products in that space, what I think what we're doing is we're focusing on kind of other ICPs that have similar requirements. I think a lot of it is internal. There's a lot of like IT teams that want very similar product, very similar features. It's almost all the same. You know, it's like IT, HR, revenue ops. So there's a lot of internal operations and a lot of teams internally that want a lot of the same functionality, including all the AI stuff, including a lot of the same features. So I think a lot of our expansion is towards kind of other teams. And the way that we're usually like to be brought in the door really is like this is one of those like nice things about being on Slack. And I think I was talking to one of our competitors one time, and it's like one of the nice things about this product on being on Slack is that it's very viral on its own. As soon as somebody installs it, lots of other people see it. Lots of other people start interacting with it automatically. Um, and that kind of goes both, to other companies, but also internally. So what we see a lot is that, one of our customers will install Foqal, start working with their customers. Those customers see it and go, oh, that's great. We also want to use it. But also that works internally as well, right? Somebody installs it, in the same way. IT teams go, hey, we want to do that. And CS teams or HR teams and revenue teams and finance teams and legal teams all see that and go, oh, we want to also do that. So I think a lot of our kind of market expansion is really just like getting in the door, right? It's a standard land and expand, right? We get in the door through CS, we get in the door through IT, we get in the door through HR, and then we expand out to other use cases, trying to fit kind of those use cases. So I think a lot of the complexity ends up being, um, what are those kind of unique things for these different teams? We find out is kind of what we were talking about earlier, is that how are agents different? It's not that necessarily that the agents are too different. It's just that the way that the data sources or the kind of what they talk to in the background is different, right? So for support, somebody's asking a question, you might be talking to Salesforce about that, about that request. You might be talking to, your documentation about that request, about how to do something. When you expand it out to IT, they'll have the same, the number one question from customer support is, how do I reset my password? One of the number one questions for IT is, how do I reset my password? It's the same thing, just the function of how you actually do it is a little bit different. From the external side, it's, you go talk to the product or whatever, change something in the database. On the internal side, it's you go talk to your like Okta or something and go reset it. So it's a lot of the same kind of things. It's just that the tooling and what you actually talk to is a little bit different. So I think that's kind of a lot of where we're seeing a lot of expansion is not just support use cases, but other use cases. So that's one area. And I mean, I think there's always going to be new features and new functionality. And I think the other side is like looking at other channels. Like if you asked me a year ago what we're looking at expanding to, I would probably say, oh yeah, we need to do WhatsApp as a common thing, like a common channel, which to some degree it still is, or other chat platforms like Discord. Now we're kind of going, do we really need to do that? And really, when we first started going into kind of Slack support, that was the hottest thing to do. That was like the thing that people are expanding to. And now I'm thinking in 5, 10 years, is that still going to be a thing? Sure, there's going to be some communication, and sure, there's going to be some communication tool, whether it's Slack Teams or something else. But is that where people are going to want support? Is it really just, do we have a ChatGPT connector and that's it, right? Or do we have, a AI connector and really we're just a headless agent where we can answer questions and we don't necessarily have to be inside of a messaging platform? So there's a lot of, so I think
Hmm.
the kind of the future we're looking at is it's not necessarily just chat. It's maybe what is that next communication channel, or what's the next place that people are going to expect to get support. So I think that's the area that I'm kind of most excited to explore as well.
Love that, man. Love the way that you're approaching it, like getting in the door first, understanding the vicinities and looking at like what kind of operations and workflows, products, use cases, support verticals that they have across different organizations. Love that. I mean, it was always having it's always been pleasure following your journey on LinkedIn, and our entire team loves the way push on different commenting and posting and contributions onto your LinkedIn, and such a good educator you are, and just like you are today. So thank you very much for your time, Vlad, and look forward to your journey at Focal, and I'm super excited to how things are unfolding and you're expanding within teams, within organization, and I think that's you're gonna crush it.
Thank you so much. Always happy to be
Loved
here.
it.
Thanks for having me.
Likewise. Bye bye.